Hollywood love story of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard began as a storybook romance. The handsome lead man falls for a young and upcoming star. They become the dream couple for paparazzi. But when the relationship turns volatile and implodes, they become the big story for a whole different reason. And now, 5 years later, it will be up to a jury to figure out who was the real victim in the relationship. Was it Johnny?
Today, his name is associated with a lie.
Or was it Amber?
And you're going to hear who he really is in his own words, in the vile, graphic, terrible messages that he wrote about Amber and what he wanted to do to Amber.
Tonight, we are live at the courthouse in Fairfax County, Virginia, with all the accusations hurled in court today in Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard. I'm Vinnie Politan. Great to have you with us tonight here on Closing Arguments, live from Fairfax County, Virginia, in front of the Fairfax County courthouse, where today Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard, day one. And when you're usually watching a trial on court TV, it's pretty easy to figure out who the victim is. In most cases, we cover murder trials, and when you have a murder case or an investigation and you've got a crime scene, it's pretty easy to figure out who the victim is. It's the guy who got shot. It's the woman who was strangled. It was the person who was bludgeoned to death. Not a complicated concept to say, okay, this is the victim in this case. Now, we've seen recently that's not always super clear. In the trial of Kyle Rittenhouse, which we covered on Court TV, the whole word victim took on a different meaning because no one was allowed to say the word victim inside the courtroom during the course of the trial because Kyle Rittenhouse claimed self-defense. Yes, he shot and killed two people, shot a third who didn't die. They were shooting victims, but they weren't crime victims because at the end of the day, that jury came back and said there was no crime. So in that case, the judge said you couldn't use the word victim. It wasn't clear who was the victim. It turns out it was actually Kyle Rittenhouse who was shooting and killing two people and a third in self-defense. Now, let's take a look at what's happening here in Fairfax County, Virginia. Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. The big question really in this case, in this trial for this jury is who is the victim? They were married. They had a very volatile relationship. There's a lot of accusations being thrown back and forth. But for this jury inside this courtroom and for this case, it's really about who's the victim. It's not clear. It's not. It's going to be up to the jury to tell us who the victim is. Now, Amber Heard went to court before the divorce settlement. Black eyes, got a protective order, but then she dismissed those charges. And she said, no, not going forward with anything. But at some point, she claimed to be a victim. And then there's Johnny Depp, who has brought this lawsuit against Amber Heard. And he's brought this lawsuit saying he's really a victim on two counts. One, he's a victim of defamation. He's been accused of being an abuser when he's not. So he's claiming to be a victim there. He's also claiming, and this was the part of this case, I think, that has taken a turn that's a little different, right? It's a defamation case. You accuse me of being something I'm not, I'm suing you. But he's taken it a step further and said, not only did you lie about me, but I, Johnny Depp, am the victim of domestic abuse by you, Amber Heard. And today, opening statements inside the courtroom, and in opening statements, both sides tell their story. They lay it out for the jury, tell them exactly what they intend to prove during the course of this trial. And one thing that Johnny Depp and his team want to prove to this jury is that Johnny Depp is a victim. Take a listen.
The evidence will show that Ms. Heard went to great lengths to win him over by playing the doting girlfriend. And it worked up with her. And over time, the real Miss Heard began to emerge. She would berate him, scream at him. He would try to appease her, and sometimes, just sometimes, things would get better. But it would all. The evidence will show that Mr. Depp started coping with Ms. Heard in the same way he did as a child. Avoid the conflict. But his trying to leave enraged Ms. Heard. She would resort to physical violence. And you're going to hear that when Ms. Heard got violent, Mr. Depp would just retreat. In her words, Ms. Heard's words, he would split. You will not see a single photograph of the vast majority of the abuse alleged by Ms. Heard. Not one. And there is not a single photograph or video showing Mr. Depp becoming physically violent towards Ms. Heard. The only medical report of an injury during their relationship was a severe one, and it was sustained by Mr. Depp. After an argument, shortly after their marriage, while the couple was in Australia, she berated him, and when he tried to leave, she became violent. She became so violent, in fact, she threw a vodka bottle at him that hit his hand and exploded. It severed the end of one of his fingers. You will learn that there came a time when Mr. Depp was done.
So on May 21st, Mr. Depp came by the apartment that he shared with Ms. Heard in the Eastern Columbia building, or the ECB, as some people refer to it, to tell her that, to pick up his things, and to say goodbye. There is no dispute that soon after Mr. Depp ended things with Ms. Heard and left the apartment on May 21st, he got on a plane to head out on a European tour, a music tour, for months with his band, the Hollywood Vampires. You will hear from the police officers who responded to a 911 call on May 21st after Mr. Depp left. The police officers will testify that they saw no injuries on Ms. Heard, nor did the police officers see any of the property damages that you will hear Ms. Heard claims existed in the apartments that evening. And you will hear those officers under oath testify that there was no violence and there was no crime. You will also hear from multiple witnesses who, like the police officers, saw Ms. Heard between May 21 and May 26. Those are the crucial days between the alleged incident and the day she walked into court with her lawyer and got an ex parte order. And those witnesses will testify that they saw her without any marks, any signs of injury on her face. Ultimately, this trial is about clearing Mr. Depp's name of a terrible and false allegation. We ask you in the next several weeks to please carefully consider the evidence, assess the reliability and credibility of that evidence, and to make your own determination about what actually happened between Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard.
Amazing turn in all of this. Johnny Depp not just saying Amber Heard lied about him, but saying Amber Heard was abusing Johnny Depp. Let me bring in Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter with me here outside the courthouse. She was in the courtroom today. I was in there as well. To me, this is a big part of this case. You know, you say it's defamation. It's not about defamation. It's about domestic violence and who the victim is here. And they are painting a picture of Amber Heard as being the aggressor in this relationship.
They are, Vinny, that she was the perpetrator of the violence in the relationship. She was the instigator, and she manipulated Johnny Depp when he would retreat or threaten to leave the marriage. The opening statement even included the fact that they're going to call their marriage counselor to the stand, who, in treating them as a couple, said she was the one, she was the aggressor.
That's amazing.
And
wait. Let's sit on that for a second. The marriage counselor for Johnny Depp and Amber Heard is going to get inside the courtroom and speak. To me,
Yes.
that is a big witness. big witness.
Huge witness for the inside glimpse from a third-party perspective. That'll be really important to this jury in making that decision. We're going to hear from them. Also, doctors and nurses who treated both Johnny Depp and Amber Heard over their years together. The contention was that, Johnny Depp, of course, being the victim, but that the injuries that Amber Heard lied about kind of flipped the script. Like what she was perpetrating on Johnny, what she now says, oh, she was the victim. So it's almost as if she's reversing roles in her story in these allegations.
And you talk about roles. I mean, their perspectives and what we heard today in that courtroom couldn't be more opposite, right? It's one extreme and it's another extreme. So here's the question, though. Johnny Depp wanted to leave the marriage. So he's saying it was his idea to leave the marriage because of the abuse and what was going on.
Right. So the picture that Depp's attorneys painted was that Heard wooed Johnny Depp. She saw him as a target, someone wealthy, someone who had power, and she manipulated him with her womanly ways into marrying her to benefit her career and to benefit her financially. And when he threatened to leave her and file for divorce, she retaliated, making up these allegations, pointing to him as a domestic abuser. And that's what instigated this entire thing. That is the story of Depp's attorneys.
That's an interesting story, right? Because Johnny Depp, I want to leave you, and all right, you're leaving me. Okay, now I'm going to turn this around because I'm going to no longer be Mrs. Johnny Depp. Right. Or she's Amber Heard, but I'm not going to be Johnny Depp's wife. We're not going to be together. Let me bring in my other guest to get a little perspective on this. Janelle Weinstein, family law attorney, joining us tonight from River Edge, New Jersey. Always have to disclose when Janelle's on the show that we worked in the same courthouse as young attorneys. She was a clerk for the judge that I appeared in front of all the time. Great to see you, Janelle. Also with us, Dr. Nadim Karim, who is a forensic psychiatrist, criminologist. He's in Los Angeles, so he's in the middle of all this stuff, right, out in L.A. All right. Janelle, let me start with you. Family law, when a couple breaks up, things get nasty. Things get really nasty. How common is it for both sides to be accusing each other of domestic violence, of being the victim of abuse by the other spouse?
It is unfortunately very common because when the relationship breaks down and they get to that point where they're looking to have and get divorced, they start to have a lot of pressure, a lot of things happen in the house, unfortunately.
Let me ask you a quick follow-up on that, Janelle, because this is what a lot of people are going to say. The lawyer told you to make it up so you get a better settlement. The lawyer told you to make it up so we get custody of the kids. What's the truth?
The truth is a lawyer would never do that. And the fact of the matter is a client will come in or they'll call the police, whatever the case may be, and allege that there's this abuse. It's not for the lawyer to make that decision. But if there in fact is a allegation that's made and they feel very concerned, they have to report it. And the problem becomes generally when people are at this place in their relationship that things get very heated and very frustrated. I don't know if this was the case here. There may have been a prior history of this volatility. But the fact is when they're coming to this point where they want out, there is a lot of emotion. There's money involved. And in other cases, not this case, there are children involved. And the perspectives get very skewed. The personalities get very heated. And sometimes there is violence and sometimes there's the allegation of violence that's not actually true. Okay,
Dr. Nadim Karim in L.A. You heard what Chanley Painter reported tonight, that the counselor for Johnny Depp and Amber Heard is going to come into the courtroom and testify. Number one, I've never seen that before. It may happen all the time. I don't know. But what do you expect to hear from the counselor? And does this counselor become that third party that becomes the voice that this jury may listen to and say, okay, here's what was really happening?
I think it's fascinating. Does it happen? It does. I mean, you do see therapists, psychiatrists, doctors get on the stand, Vinnie, but the uniqueness of this particular witness, as you indicated in your opening remarks, really comes down to her or him, whoever the marriage counselor is, identifying Amber as the aggressor. I mean, think about that for a second, right? That is unparalleled in my experience. I worked on hundreds of domestic violence cases, and the nuance there is she's going to have to show, or he's going to have to show, that Johnny Depp suffered from some type of PTSD or chronic anxiety in relation to his now ex-wife's actions. And I think that's fascinating because the cases that I've worked on, chronic anxiety and PTSD are really, really important in terms of explaining to a jury who is the victim, what injury was established, and not only medical injuries, but mental health trauma. And that's why I think it's going to be fascinating, in response to your question, to have this marriage counselor come forward and say, in fact, there's trauma not only towards the victim, the female victim here, but in fact, the male victim, in this case, Mr. Depp, has suffered equal, if not more intense, psychological trauma in the form of chronic anxiety and PTSD. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens in that regard. And I can't wait to hear this the testimony of this witness.
Powerful stuff, really giving you an inside look at this relationship. Okay, Janelle and the doctor staying with us throughout the hour. When we come back, what is seen inside the courtroom? There are a lot of supporters for Johnny Depp here in Fairfax, Virginia. You're going to meet one of them live right next to me when we come back.
your list at Knix.com.
A real amazing moment at the end of the day. Now, the judge getting off the bench. I'm all the way in the back of the courtroom, but this courtroom is filled with Johnny Depp supporters. Trust me, and you'll see why in just a moment. Because as the judge leaves, now Johnny Depp is the first to leave. Amber Heard stays in the courtroom. But watch, Johnny gives a little wave. 3/4 of the people in the gallery wave back. It was really an amazing moment. I've been going and covering trials around this country for decades. I have never seen any sort of connection like that between someone who is in the middle of a trial and the people that are there. Not at any other celebrity trial, not at any other case. Never seen it. It was amazing, and it took me by surprise. So, as I mentioned, a lot of supporters for Johnny Depp here. One may just be the biggest supporter, and she's seated to my left right now. Yvonne DeBoer is with us. Yvonne, welcome. Great to see you.
Well, thank you, Vinny.
Thanks for hanging out at the courthouse tonight. We appreciate it. I know it's a long day for the attorneys, but a long day for you, too, as well.
Okay.
So give us a little background. Like where are you from, and what is your connection to Johnny Depp?
I'm from Los Angeles, so came out here just for Johnny. I've been his #1 fan for 36 years. So I've had many opportunities to meet him, spend time with him, go to concerts, really get to know him. And
so take us back 36 years. What is the first time you think about Johnny and you hear about Johnny and say, wow?
Edward Scissorhands.
Scissorhands
Yep,
was. Okay.
That's what did it.
All right, we're looking at some pictures. You have a whole bunch of photos we're showing of you and Johnny Depp. This is legit. She is there with him.
Yes.
Tell me about being in court today.
Okay.
And let's just start first with the moment that we saw coming in, where Johnny turned and acknowledged you and everyone else that was there today.
Well, he actually saw me and my girlfriends first that he knows, so he stopped there first. But yeah, everybody was waving to him and acknowledging him.
Wait, he said stop there first. What do you mean stop there first?
He stops wherever I am or my girlfriends that he knows us, and he'll acknowledge us first. So he saw us. And then everybody else was, and he was so happy and pleased, he made sure to wave to everybody.
Okay.
All the supporters.
Now, you were in there for these opening statements.
Yes.
Okay? I'm going to focus with you on what was said by the attorneys for Amber Heard.
Okay.
Well, these are some really harsh allegations against Johnny Depp, a guy that, I mean, your #1 fan. Your thoughts about what you heard from her attorney today?
It was quite shocking. Not unexpected, to be honest with you.
Why is that?
She'll pull out all the stops and all the punches to get where she needs to go. Very hurtful because over the years you get to know this man. You spend time with him. You see him interacting with fans or with people that are in trouble, charities. I don't believe the allegations. To me, they're not true. But as a whole, it was quite shocking to have to sit there and listen to it, you know, because it's very, very serious.
Well, let me ask you this. Is there anything that you could potentially hear inside of the courtroom behind us that would change your mind about Johnny Depp? You know, there are people that, you know, they're a big fan maybe of a sports figure. Something happens and all of a sudden, I'm not a big fan anymore, you know?
No.
Is there anything that you could hear that would...
Never. I've been following this case for 6 years since it's been going on, and you know it's been pretty ugly.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, even with this ugliness, there's nothing they could say or tell me that will change my mind about Johnny Depp.
All right, so you're a fan of Johnny Depp when he meets Amber Heard, right? And starts dating her, ends up marrying her. Did you ever meet her? Did you ever see them together in any of their public appearances?
To be honest with you, she didn't come with him a lot because she's very jealous of him with the fans. She doesn't want him to go to the fans. So she'll pull him back and he will go. So she didn't go to any of the events that I went to. I've seen her on TV with him at events, but I never met her or saw her with him.
Okay, now I'm going to get to some of the specific allegations because there's also testimony from Johnny's sister today and some text messages. Your thoughts about his use of alcohol? Let's start there because there are videos and recordings where he seems to be under the influence. Do you think that Johnny Depp has a drinking problem, has a drug problem? Were you surprised to hear about that today inside the courtroom?
I'll only say we're all human beings. And he comes from Kentucky, and you know, Kentucky, Florida. We all experiment, so probably he started during his childhood, and he's probably just like all of us. go to a party, you start talking, you're drinking, you lose track.
Okay.
You might be done, you might have too many. As far as drugs, the only thing what I would think is because he has painkillers, because he's had many injuries on the set. They can be addictive, and they're tough to break.
All right, now let's get more about you right now. I want to focus on you just a little bit. Some people are going to say this is extraordinary to travel across the country. You're going to spend 31 days at this trial.
Yes.
Is that all your vacation from work?
That is all my vacation from work.
And no problem?
No problem. No problem. I'd do anything for him. I go anywhere for him. I've been to Europe for him.
What do you mean you've been to Europe for Johnny Depp? What does that mean?
I went on the Hollywood Vampires tour. I went to 5 different countries.
Oh, wow.
So
some people, you know, they follow the Grateful Dead. You follow the vampires.
I follow the vampires, yes.
And so are you more of a fan of Johnny Depp, the actor, or Johnny Depp, the musician, or it doesn't matter to you?
It doesn't matter. Whatever his passion is and makes him happy, I love it. His #1 passion is music, so that's fantastic. But I love him as an actor. I think he's so versatile, and I think he's a genius.
Do you think the results of this trial, if he wins, let's say he wins, right? I'm presuming best case scenario for Johnny Depp and his legal team, that this jury comes back and says, yeah, he's been defamed. She made this up.
Exactly.
Do you think that he gets accepted by Hollywood, accepted by the rest of the folks out there who used to go to his movies?
It's going to help him a great deal. It's going to help with his credibility and build back his name and hopefully help him to get back into work that he loves to do. But as far as the cancel culture, Johnny Depp doesn't care about Hollywood anymore. He's got his own production company. He's working on several projects in Europe. He's going to make a movie in France in July. So for him, mainly it's to clear his name, to get his credibility, and to have people see.
But do you think this is a mistake? Because it's going to, it's going to get ugly in there, right?
It's going to get uglier,
This is going to be uglier than a divorce case because it's very personal, and they're both accusing one another of being domestic abusers.
Exactly.
Their counselor is going to testify.
Correct.
If you had a moment to sit with Johnny, would you say, Johnny, just walk away from this? Or would you say, Johnny, no, stay in there and fight?
I actually told him once.
You did?
Yeah, I said, you have to fight. And he agreed. You know, I said, I'm so proud of you that you're so strong, but you got to fight it. What they're saying is not true. Fight it.
All right. I need a fan like Yvonne. That's what I need. So if you're out there, folks, if we've got someone who wants to be a fan of me,
sure,
like Yvonne is of Johnny Depp, please, Steph, great to meet you. Thank you so much.
Great to meet you, Vinny.
All right.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Sit tight.
I will.
When we come back, folks, we've got a lot more to get to. Let me just go to the page here. What is next? What is next? I got so involved here. Oh, my goodness. Amber Heard. Is she the victim of domestic violence? When we come back, we'll hear what her attorney had to say.
3163.
Here we go. Johnny Depp and Amber Heard arriving at the courthouse today. Wow, what a scene for them as they arrived. There they are. Bingo. Take a look. It's interesting. I mean, she's very business, and he's just Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp's always going to be Johnny Depp. You know, she may dress like that other times, but she was a little more professional, almost looking like a member of the legal team. And Johnny Depp is... And Johnny Depp, obviously, if you try to be someone different in court, no one's going to buy it, right? We know who he is. We've known him for years. But today, inside the courtroom, the real battle during these opening statements were two different stories, two completely different narratives about who was the aggressor and who was the victim of domestic abuse in this relationship. We talked about Johnny Depp and his version of what happened. Take a listen now to Amber Heard's attorney talking about what happened down in Australia.
First of all, the evidence will show that Amber did suffer domestic abuse at the hands of Johnny Depp. And it took many forms. Physical, sure, but also emotional, verbal, psychological abuse. It's all domestic abuse that she suffered at his hands. You'll hear evidence of that 3-day blackout in Australia that Ms. Vasquez tried to minimize and tell you was false. A 3-day blackout in which he abused and sexually assaulted Amber, all because she had the courage to confront him about his drinking. You'll also see pictures of what Mr. Depp did after he cut off his finger, when he dipped it in blood and paint and wrote graffiti all around the house. That's what you're going to see he did. And you're going to ask yourself, how can someone that is blacked out, how can they deny that they abused someone? How can they deny what they were told that they did?
As you go through those 3 days of Australia, some pretty horrendous things happen to her. He rips off her nightgown. He has her jammed up against a bar. He has hurled bottles and bottles at her. He has dragged her across the floor on the broken bottles and the liquor. He has punched her, pounding her, and then he penetrates her with a liquor bottle. That's the Johnny Depp that you're going to hear about in this case.
That was a brutal assault that was alleged and described inside the courtroom today. Wow. Let me bring back in Chanley Painter, Court TV legal correspondent. Chanley, this is not like just simple assault behavior. This is an aggravated assault. This is a sexual assault. This is extreme violence that's being alleged.
Right. It's really scary to think about these allegations. So serious, so graphic, just horrifying that someone would have to allegedly suffer and endure that type of a situation. Her team really painting a scary picture of this relationship, what they call the monster of Johnny Depp, someone that the public did not know, did not see, but something very different behind closed doors.
And is the comeback to all of this, because they keep mentioning a 3-day blackout. Give me a little bit of context about where this 3-day blackout comes from.
This is about a month after they were married in Australia. He's there for Pirates of the Caribbean filming. They also bring in the name Marilyn Manson, by the way. Did you notice that today in their opening, that he was on a binge with Marilyn Manson, who's also accused of sexual assault.
Right, he's got serious allegations
So I
as
think
well.
that, yeah, so that was brought up. But this 3-day binge blackout, she's almost held as a hostage, is what they were telling this jury, that she couldn't leave, that she was being assaulted verbally, physically, emotionally, and only finally got out of it when they left Australia.
Let's bring back in our other guests to talk about this. Janelle Weinstein, family law attorney, Dr. Nadim Karim, forensic psychiatrist, criminologist in L.A. Dr. Karim, let me ask you, this is a serious allegation. This is a brutal attack. Is this something that would come up during counseling in a session? Is this something that, you know, you might want to mention to a counselor, that I was sexually assaulted and brutally beaten up a month into the marriage?
It depends. If Amber wants to be completely honest with what's happening in her relationship at the time, then certainly she's going to come forward, Vinny. I think the bottom line is this.
Let me just jump in 1 second. Let me jump in 1 second on that. I have a quick follow-up on that. So if she doesn't describe this to their counselor, why wouldn't someone who's been victimized by this and trying to work out their relationship not bring up a brutal assault like this?
It's an excellent question. It's the reason why victims of domestic violence stay in relationships. There's a learned helplessness, Vinny, that comes with a cycle of violence. And what that means is, in any relationship, when the trust is broken, the quality of the interaction between the two parties can become toxic. It can become violent. In this case, potentially it has become egregiously violent, perhaps even on both sides, where Johnny has suffered the injury to his finger, where Amber is saying that she's violently assaulted, including a sexual assault. So to answer your question specifically, Vinny, it's not surprising that Amber or any other victim of domestic violence would not bring forward that information to a marriage counselor or a therapist, because they may be in the stage of trying to reconciliate. They still love their partner. They're still trying to make it work, and they don't want to throw their partner under the bus. And so even though they're experiencing severe psychological trauma, they're blinded by their love, and they're blinded by the motivation to try to repair, rebuild what is a damaged and toxic relationship. And we see that happen many times with victims of domestic violence. Amber is certainly not the first person that potentially might have withheld that information from a mental health clinician because she's in a toxic relationship.
Fascinating insight. I want to take a listen to more of that opening statement here. Amber Heard's attorneys are talking about May 21st, 2016. This is an important date in this case. Let's take a listen.
Now, this is an important event, May 21, 2016. This is the last one, and this is the final straw that leads up to the DVTRO, the Domestic Violence Temporary Restraining Order. So he says he's coming over to get some clothes. He's going to go out on tour. She says, okay. He comes over, and his mother died the day before, and he's already in a state. He's been drinking. He's clearly high. And then he started hitting Amber. He grabbed the cell phone from her, wound it up, and bashed it into her face. And you will see the pictures. You will see the bruise there, and you'll see the form of it there. The police are called twice, essentially. And now, here's what happens next. Johnny goes around and he trashes the apartment before he leaves. He loves to do that. You're going to hear about his penchant for that. Does it a lot. And you'll see a picture of him in the elevator afterwards, leaving with his bodyguards, and he's a little agitated there. And the police are called. You will see pictures of Amber with metadata on them, both before, during, and after the police officers are there. But what happens is Amber calls her attorney, the one that she had consulted after the December 15 event. And the attorney says, if you press charges, they'll arrest him. And Amber says, I can't have that happen. I don't want his kids to know about this. I don't want the public to know. I can't have that happen. So when the police show up, she refuses to cooperate. She says, on the advice of my attorney, I'm not going to cooperate.
I want to bring back in Chanley Painter, Court TV legal correspondent. Chanley, this
is at the end of the marriage. So this is the day after Johnny Depp's mother passes away. That's when, according to him, he wants to her. His story is that he went over to the house that night to tell her they're getting a divorce. Her version is what we just heard, that he comes over to pick up some clothes to go on tour when it all really goes down. And that's 6 days later when she actually goes in and receives the temporary restraining order against him.
Family law attorney Janelle Weinstein still with us. Janelle, let me ask you about this. This is such a significant date, two completely different versions of what happened, but this is the end of the marriage. So what are your thoughts tonight about these two different ways that the end of the marriage is described, and what happened that night where Amber Heard says she called her attorney, someone like you, and got advice that, hey, if you say anything to police, he's going to get arrested?
Right, and that's very common. And if you are a victim of domestic violence, many times the fear that something's going to happen, although it sounds really strange, to your partner is something that have people back off from the temporary restraining order. Here, she does go and she gets it. And the important thing here to understand, when you go for a temporary restraining order, the victim is just the alleged victim. It's just one side of the story. Johnny Depp doesn't have the opportunity to respond. There's no subject to cross-examination. The victim's not subject to cross-examination. So she received the temporary restraining order, but the temporary restraining order was eventually dismissed by her. There was no final hearing. There was no trier of fact, a judge, to decide whether or not it was warranted to have a restraining order. So at the end of the day, we only heard one side of the story. We didn't hear from Johnny Depp. She wasn't subject to cross-examination. So they're using that as a vital piece of evidence to say, I was a public figure that was a victim of abuse. I got this temporary restraining order. And also all of the history she alleges as well. But it's important to understand a temporary restraining order is just one side of the story in order to obtain the temporary restraining order.
Dr. Nadim Karim, your thoughts about trying to figure 7 people in that jury box are going to have to get together and all agree about what really happened at the end of this marriage. Does your gut tell you that one version sounds a little more credible and a little more usual than the other, or are they both equally possible?
My gut tells me, Vinnie, to rely on my professional and clinical experience, which also leads me to respond to you by saying 2 sides to every story. And the bottom line is the jury is going to have to determine which side they believe. And this is why, from a clinical perspective, as a forensic psychologist, Vinnie, if I'm advising the legal team on either side, I'm really getting them to really focus on trauma and on PTSD. And the reason is, whether it's this event or the sum total of all of the alleged abuse on either side and both sides, the legal team that can present the clinical argument that their client has suffered, if you will, and I hate to say the worst trauma, but the most severe trauma, and portrays their client in the most sympathetic and humanistic light, not as the aggressor, but as the victim who has incurred not only the most severe mental health injury, but the most severe post-traumatic trauma. And I think that is the key to this case. Which side
That's
is going to
incredible,
convince the jury?
incredible insight. That is an insight and perspective that would never have crossed my mind. I'm so glad we had you on the show tonight. We're out of time for this segment, but of course, both of you are going to be back. Janelle Weinstein, family law attorney, Dr. Nadim Karim in Los Angeles, clinical psychologist. Thank you both so much. When we come back, we're going to take a look at some reactions inside the courtroom from Johnny Depp and Amber Heard as they listened to these opening statements.
Johnny. How'd it go today?
It's another day.
Johnny Depp leaving court today. Amazing. Always waving, and first thing he does when he leaves is lights up and then gets into his SUV and gets whisked off. Today, inside the courtroom, our cameras were able to capture both Amber Heard and Johnny Depp listening to these opening statements. Because remember, both opening statements, there are some accusations that were tossed around inside that courtroom. So let's take a look and a listen. We're going to take a look at Johnny Depp listening to some allegations. Let's watch.
In this trial, Ms. Heard will undoubtedly present photos that supposedly show injuries she sustained as a result of the claimed abuse by Mr. Depp. Here's what you should keep in mind when you see these photographs. First, the evidence and expert testimony from a forensic pathologist, a doctor, will show that the injuries reflected in these photographs are not consistent with the brutal allegations of abuse Ms. Heard has alleged.
And that was Johnny Depp listening to his own attorney describing some of those injuries. Chanley Painter still with us outside the courthouse here in Fairfax. So one thing I noticed about Johnny Depp, and again, when you're in the courtroom, right, you see him from behind, but there's this intensity that I'm capturing. We cover trials all the time, but let's start with Johnny. I mean, he is in the moment the whole time.
He is. Well, he is an actor, a very experienced actor. He brings that confidence into the courtroom. Vinny, I was inside when he walked in first thing this morning. Of course, you've been in there. It's a giant courtroom and full of his fans, right? So Amber Heard walks in first. It's like quiet. Nobody really says anything. But then the opposite side door opens where Johnny comes in. And it's like this audible intake of air throughout the whole room because it's Johnny Depp, and of course he walks in, acknowledges the gallery. It's just a different type of presence you see in the courtroom. Now, as they sit there, as you know, you only really see the back of his head, so it's great that our cameras show the other side and we can actually see his actions.
Absolutely. That's why it's such a big moment when he does turn in the courtroom, because the people that are there watching are just seeing the back of this. But you at home watching court TV, you're seeing the reactions as they're happening. This was a fascinating angle that we had today because you see the opening statement and you're watching Johnny Depp's reaction. That is the attorney for Amber Heard. Let's take a look now at Amber Heard inside the courtroom listening to some of the opening statement from Johnny Depp's attorney.
The next 3 days are just a cycle of very, very, very violent activity by him. Amber keeps trying to calm him down. She tries to get him to eat. She tries to get him to sleep. She tries to do these things. And he would just, he was, at times delusional, paranoid. He would be, mad at somebody else. Then he'd be mad at her.
And of course, I was wrong. That was Johnny Depp. You saw his reaction to the attorneys for Amber Heard. And it's fascinating watching it. And I know the jury can see Johnny Depp, right?
The jury can see Johnny Depp. Now, this is a kind of oddly shaped courtroom because the jury box is sort of like, here's the gallery, and then it's like the gallery can't really see the jury, but they can see the counsel tables here. So they can see Johnny Depp, mostly the side profile of him. And of course, Amber, the way she's positioned in the courtroom, she's almost facing directly towards the jury. So they really have a better view of Amber Heard, who really had almost the same expression all day on her face.
Okay, and do we have some of Amber Heard? We can show a little Amber Heard reaction. Let's watch. We don't have Amber Heard. Okay. Thought we had Amber Heard, but we don't. Okay, so, we only have a couple seconds here left. This jury, young men.
Yes. Stark. As soon as they walked in, 8 men, 3 women, mostly young. I mean, I don't even know if one's barely 18, Vinny, on this jury.
Unbelievable. Young male jury. Chanley Painter, thank you so much. We've got another hour, folks. We're live here at the courthouse. When we come back, we're going to talk about a lot of questions, like why are we in Virginia to begin with? And also, we'll bring in our legal think tank. Don't go anywhere, folks. We are live in Fairfax County, Virginia. In Fairfax County, Virginia, day one of Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard. Wild accusations from attorneys on both sides of this case as the jury listens to opening statements.
So you have the alleged victim and the sister laughing about a fake punch. Would anyone ever joke about that?
You'll hear evidence of Depp taking more drugs than you can count. kicked Amber in the back on a private jet.
Tonight, we take a look at how Johnny Depp's attorneys described Amber Heard. Did she marry Johnny for fame and for money? Or is she a victim of domestic violence? And why is this case in Virginia to begin with? We are live at the courthouse with all the big moments. I'm Vinnie Politan. Great to have you with us here tonight in closing arguments live from Fairfax County, Virginia, in front of the Fairfax County Courthouse, where today, it got personal. It got extremely personal inside that courtroom. You know, there are cases that you cover, and, it's about business. A company is suing a company. They want to get money. Everyone's very professional. Oh, yes, you breached the contract. That's not what's going on inside this courthouse. This is like, you want to call it mudslinging, you want to use any cliche you want, War of the Roses, however you want to describe it. At its core, though, it is two people who hate each other. Two people who blame each other for the problems that they're having in their careers. It's so bitter. It is so real. It is so raw. And it's all playing out. And you think to yourself, why on earth would two stars, and they are stars, I mean, they are real stars, lots of money, lots of fame, all of that, why would you want to air that in front of the world? Right? Well, for Johnny Depp, this case, give his side of the story and trying to scream at the top of his lungs, abuser, I don't abuse women, I didn't abuse Amber Heard. And Amber Heard on the other side saying, listen, I am a victim, I am truly a victim. He wants to say, I'm not a victim. He wants to say he's not an abuser, but he is. And that's what's happening inside the courtroom. So I want to begin this hour talking about Johnny Depp and how he and his legal team are portraying Amber Heard. Right? It's opening statements, and this is your opportunity to lay the foundation. This is the filter through which the jury hears all the evidence during the course of the case. So Johnny Depp gets to go first. He's the plaintiff in all of this. So his attorneys really getting very detailed in their description of Amber Heard, who she is, and what type of person she is. And it might be a little bit cliche what they're alleging, but they're saying this is what the truth is. And this is who Amber Heard is. Take a listen.
The evidence will show that Ms. Heard went to great lengths to win him over by playing the doting girlfriend. And it worked. He fell head over heels in love with her. And over time, the real Ms. Heard began to emerge. She would berate him, scream at him. He would try to appease her, and sometimes, just sometimes, things would get better. But it would always happen again. The evidence will show that Mr. Depp started coping with Ms. Heard in the same way he did as a child. He would try to get away, avoid the conflict. But his trying to leave enraged Ms. Heard. She would resort to physical violence. Had to remove Mr. Depp from scenes with Ms. Heard, screaming at him, chasing him, trying to keep him from leaving. You're going to hear evidence that when Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard traveled together, his team routinely had to book an extra room for him so that he had somewhere to go when Ms. Heard became enraged. You will not see a single photograph of the vast majority of the abuse alleged by Ms. Heard. Not one. And there is not a single photograph or video showing Mr. Depp becoming physically violent towards Ms. Heard. The only medical report of an injury during their relationship was a severe one, and it was sustained by Mr. Depp. After an argument shortly after their marriage, while the couple was in Australia, she berated him, and when he tried to leave, she became violent. She became so violent, in fact, she threw a vodka bottle at him that hit his hand and exploded. It severed the end of one of his fingers. Now, I understand that many of you may be asking yourselves, why? Why would Ms. Heard say that Mr. Depp abused her during their relationship if it didn't actually happen? Why would she make up the detailed, dramatic tales of abuse that you will surely hear in this courtroom over the coming weeks? By the end of this trial, you will have the answer to that question. The evidence will show exactly who Ms. Heard is.
How about that? Were you expecting that? Were you expecting that portrayal of Amber Heard? What impact will all this have on the jury? Will they buy it? Let's bring in our think tank tonight. Joining us, criminal defense attorney, former federal prosecutor, law professor at Texas Southern University, Michael Sterling is with us. And we can't have a celebrity trial without Ann Bremner, trial attorney, joining us in Seattle, Washington tonight. And down in West Palm Beach, Florida, former police lieutenant, trial attorney Rick King. Great to see you all tonight. Michael Sterling, what are your thoughts about this? This case apparently is not just about Johnny Depp saying, I am not an abuser. This case is about Johnny Depp saying, Amber Heard, sounded like they were calling her a little bit of a gold digger, fame chaser, and someone who was the actual abuser in this relationship.
Yeah, Vinny, I mean, I think that was a, dark portrayal of who Amber Heard was. What the plaintiff's attorney, Johnny Depp's attorney, laid out was what they believe the evidence is going to demonstrate that Amber Heard was in terms of Johnny Depp. And what they were doing sort of subtly, or maybe not so subtly, was saying, let me explain to you why she made these allegations up without actually telling you this is the reason. So if you heard the end of it, she sort of said, you may ask yourself why she made it up. Well, she had already told the jury why she made it up, right? She had already sort of led them there, basically saying she was chasing fame. She's trying to be someone who's famous. She's the actual abuser, and she doesn't want to be portrayed as so. So what does she do? She accuses him of doing why Amber Heard may have made these allegations up without telling the jury what to think. So they sort of planted it without actually telling them, here's what you should think.
Do you think this is too much to try to prove in front of this jury? And do you think it's a heavy load that you're not only saying that she's lying about you, but now you are turning around and saying, you're the one who was abusing me?
Well, you never want to take on a burden you don't have to, right, Vinny? And I mean, they don't need to show her to be, something that they're trying to portray in their opening statement. On the other hand, I think it's actually very well done because this is who she is. And she wants fame. I mean, people can understand that. It's very simple. Why are we here? Johnny Depp's got all these legions of fans. He's trying to clear his name. Why would he bring this case if he did all these bad things? So this is who she is. This is why we're here. So I think it was actually well done. And we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, I'll tell you why Amber Heard and her attorney say he brought this case, because he's relentless. He wants to make her life miserable. Yeah. And that's going to be their argument.
Yeah.
Let me do this, Rick. Let me play for you. Opening statements aren't evidence. Judge always tells the jury that. But I want to play for you a recording of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. And does this recording support these allegations or support this narrative that Amber Heard is the violent one? Let's listen.
I'm not going to get into the details of that fight. You and I both know that you split when there is physical violence involved. And that you do it at the very beginning of fights these days. And if you split and you go into a different room and you don't actually leave that house, it does nothing but perpetuate the fight. And you don't actually do it respectfully. You don't do it in a way that actually means we won't fight. It always makes more fights. It always makes them longer. It never, ever makes you calmer. You never come out going, I want to talk, or I'm okay, or it's going to be okay. And I am I'm sick and tired 100% of being the only one that goes and fights for it. You know what that does? It demoralizes the half of this relationship that is me. It demeans me, demoralizes me.
Really?
Yes, really. Really, when you split on me, how do you feel when I leave you?
When I split, when I go into the other room, you're saying?
You leave you get another room, you get a flight, things like that. And you asked me not to in Australia, and ever since then,
how many?
I don't know, I have to count them up.
No, because I haven't left you in the house maybe twice. Last night and another time.
No, you've done it before. I've come here before. I'm not doing that anymore.
Well, yeah, you've come here before. Last time and another time, and then last night.
You've done this several times, and getting me a room. I mean, getting another room in a hotel is just the same thing.
All right, Rick King, let me ask you about that. Does that support their version here? Because what is taking place here is both are agreeing that when there's a fight, he leaves the room.
And that's the exact testimony that his sister gave when she testified in the beginning of this trial. She said that because of his childhood, how he's brought up, he shrinks back from those encounters, and she sometimes books him another room just to make sure, because she knows it's going to happen. So I think that definitely bolsters his testimony and his theory of this case, if you will. He has the tendency to run during those times, and that's what he's saying. And that conversation seemed to indicate that she believes that, and she says that's just not helpful. But by saying that, she's affirming that that's what he's doing. He's running and not facing the fight.
Michael Sterling, let me ask you, today we got our first look at the jury, as Chanley Painter reported here last hour. I mean, it is predominantly young men, like really young men. Not young like you, like younger than you, Michael Sterling. Younger than you. Which side does that help here?
Well, Vinny, I don't want to put all men in a box, right? Because, obviously jurors
It's not all men, it's young men. Young men.
Yeah.
Are they going to be enamored by Amber Heard? Are they going to look up to Johnny Depp? How do they see the world?
Well, Vinny, you have to presume, which I do, that the lawyers vetted these jurors. They selected the ones that had bias, deselected the ones that had biases. Everybody has the same number of peremptory strikes. Everyone has the same opportunities to question jurors for biases. So you have to anticipate or at least presume that the lawyers were doing their very best along with the judge to make sure that jurors who had that type of impartiality didn't get on the jury. So the fact that, these young men made it on the jury, you have to presume that they've been able to set any potential biases or partiality aside, and that they're able to view this evidence in light of what's presented in court. So we don't know.
So you trust the young kids. Michael Sterling trusts the kids. Okay. Okay.
Well, Vinny, we don't know if they've got somebody in their life who's been abused, right? I'm saying let's not stereotype these young men. Maybe they've got a mother or a sister or someone who's been abused, but they're able to set that thing aside. We don't know what their stories are. We don't know why the defense attorney said these guys are okay to be on the jury and we're not going to use a peremptory strike or we're not going to strike them for cause. All I'm saying is life experiences are different. So despite the fact that they're young men, doesn't mean they won't be able to actually view the evidence and the facts that are presented to them in court and make a decision based on that.
But, Ann, you know what? The contrast that just struck me when I went inside that courtroom? I see all these young men in the jury box, and then I look in the gallery, and okay, there's people for, the legal team, the PR team, they're all there. Right. Everybody else is female. If you're not a member of the press, everybody else is a female. Everybody else, and it's of all ages, they are all fans of Johnny Depp, because when he waved on his way out of the courtroom, every person in that gallery, except for the media, waved back, and it was an amazing moment. So that contrast between who the Johnny Depp fan is and who's in that jury box couldn't be more different.
Yeah, I was thinking that, with the Legion of female fans, that when they pick this jury, or basically it's deselection, as we know, trying to basically get rid of the jurors who are going to be more problematic, that he had the short end of the stick. You know they have jury consultants on both sides. You know they have very experienced, fancy jury consultants that have gone through each juror's profile and talked about the profile they want and talked about the composition that they want. And it seems to me this is not the best jury for him. With the exception of this, Vinnie, these are people that don't have a lot of life experience. Maybe that's good for him in this case. Just not a lot of life experience. So they're just going to listen with an open mind and not be saying, what a creep, you know, we kind of believe what she's saying, things like that. Jumping to conclusions.
All right, think tank staying with us this whole hour. Michael Sterling, Ann Bremner, Rick King. When we come back, we're going to answer a very important question, extremely important question. Why are we in Virginia? Why is Johnny Depp and Amber Heard in Virginia? The answer when we return. Fairfax County, Virginia is beautiful. A lot of trees, a lot of space. It's suburban. But everyone's asking, why is Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard here in Fairfax County? Johnny's not from here. Amber's not from here. Well, it all goes back to the op-ed that was written by Amber Heard. It was published in the Washington Post. But we're not in Washington either. We're not in Washington, D.C. But the Washington Post is printed and published. States is where they print the Washington Post. Also, the online version of the Washington Post is published on servers in Fairfax County. All right, that's why we're here. That's why we're in Fairfax County. And what's really interesting is the location, the venue, the jurisdiction of this case came up during the opening statements by Amber Heard's attorney. Take a listen.
Depp didn't sue the Washington Post. He had no interest in doing that. He only sued Amber. He could have sued the Washington Post. They published the article, but he didn't. And he chose to bring Amber to court here in Virginia, where she has no ties, has never lived, he's never lived, where they never spent any time, because he wanted to make her life hard. He wanted to ruin her life. He wanted to destroy her.
Yeah, that Johnny Depp is trying to ruin Amber Heard's life by making her come to Fairfax County, Virginia. Let's bring back in our think tank. Struck me kind of interesting what happened there. Michael Sterling, Ann Bremner, Rick King still with us. Rick, what are your thoughts about that? Is it cruel and unusual punishment to send someone from Hollywood to Fairfax County, Virginia?
No, I don't really think so. But apparently, he made a tactical decision about what he was going to talk about. You know, there's probably other reasons why they chose Fairfax, other than just not going to D.C. or choosing another venue where they both had some sort of ties to. There's some laws in Virginia that allow these defamation type cases to come a little easier. They have anti-SLAPP laws in Virginia, which allow someone to bring someone. Ordinarily, you couldn't bring a case. It would be barred by because of the First Amendment or because of it's a case about something about public concern. But in this case, in Virginia, those laws allow you to bring it. And so easier to bring the case there, easier to get it through, and that's why they chose that.
Okay, but still, I'm wondering if I'm on that jury and you're saying, wait a minute, is it torture to come to my home county? Is it really that bad? It's actually very beautiful here.
That's what I understand
in Fairfax County.
Fairfax.
Okay. Yeah, it is. It's really nice. So let's take a listen now, because I want to get to the heart of this lawsuit, which is it's all about this op-ed that was written by Amber Heard. And in their opening statement, Amber Heard's attorneys read the whole thing to the jury. So I'm going to play for you some of it. I don't have time to play the whole thing for you. But this, again, is the attorney reading it. And what they are claiming is that, number one, they never mentioned Johnny Depp, and it's not about Johnny Depp. Let's watch.
I was exposed to abuse at a very young age. I knew certain things early on without ever having to be told. I knew that men have the power, physically, socially, and financially, and that a lot of institutions support that arrangement. I knew this long before I had the words to articulate it, and I bet you learned it young too. Like many women, I had been harassed and sexually assaulted by the time I was of college age, but I kept quiet. I did not expect filing complaints to bring justice, and I didn't see myself as a victim. Then, 2 years ago, I became a public figure representing domestic abuse, and I felt the full force of our culture's wrath for women who speak out. Imagine a powerful man as a ship, like the Titanic. That ship is a huge enterprise. When it strikes an iceberg, there are a lot of people on board desperate to patch up holes, not because they believe in or even care about the ship, but because their own fates depend on the enterprise. In recent years, the Me Too movement has taught us about how power like this works, not just in Hollywood, but in all kinds of institutions, workplaces, places of worship, or simply in particular communities. In every walk of life, women are confronting these men who are buoyed by social, economic, and cultural power. And these institutions are beginning to change. I write this as a woman who had to change my phone number weekly because I was getting death threats. For months, I rarely left my apartment. And when I did, I was pursued by camera drones and photographers on foot, on motorcycles and in cars. Tabloid outlets that posted pictures of me spun them in a negative light. I felt as though I was on trial in the court of public opinion, and my life and livelihood depended on myriad judgments far beyond my control. I want to ensure that women who come forward to talk about violence receive more support. We are electing representatives who know how deeply we care about these issues. We can work together to demand changes to laws and rules and social norms, and to right the imbalances that have shaped our lives.
Well written, very thought. I want you to presume that Johnny Depp never, ever, ever abused Amber Heard. What we just heard, would that constitute defamation against Johnny Heard? Is he defamed in what we just heard?
If he never abused her? Yes.
Presume that he never abused her, and that you still believe that that is a defamatory statement. Tell me why.
Well, it's defamation by implication. I mean, it's basically a classic case of that, where she's already been public in the UK case against the Sun, where she testified on behalf of the Sun saying he was a quote-unquote wife beater, which is what they published. And of course, Depp lost that case. So it seems to me, once she comes out and says, I've been a victim, I've been stalked, I've had all these people, come after me, now I'm part of Me Too, and we need this kind of support, which I applaud. I mean, we all do. Let's support domestic violence victims. Let's make sure that people aren't victimized, that people aren't brutalized, that they're not ostracized. But what she's also saying, who else would it be except for Johnny Depp that she's talking about in this op-ed piece in the Washington Post? Therefore, it's defamation, at least from his vantage point.
Michael Sterling, in the opening statement, very clear from Amber Heard's attorneys. They said this op-ed was not about Johnny Depp. He's not even mentioned in it. Your thoughts about what we heard?
And Vinny, I'll be honest with you, I'm having deja vu from a lawsuit I filed several years ago against Simon & Schuster and Tiffany Haddish and her ghostwriter. It's almost deja vu. She wrote a chapter called The Ex-Husband, where she never mentioned my client by name, but obviously she only had one ex-husband. That's public record. So, the defamation laws are such that you don't have to mention the person by name, but if your implication is so clear as to identify the person, which I think allegations is clearly identifying him, that despite the fact you're saying it's not about him, if you've identified him through circumstantial information and circumstantial evidence, which we know the jury's going to be instructed is as good as direct evidence, then the fact of the matter is, if your assumption, Vinny, is correct that he never abused her, then this is in fact defamation, because she has sufficiently identified him through the circumstances she describes in that op-ed.
Folks, that's why we bring these guests in. I mean, the experience, the insight is unparalleled in legal journalism. Thanks so much. They're going to stay with us. Michael Sterling, Ann Bremner, Rick King. When we come back, there's a lot of other stories happening on Court TV. We've got like 3 other trials happening. We're going to get an update on all of that from Joy Lim-Nakrin when we come back. We've got some breaking news tonight, folks, in another one of the big cases that we're covering here on Court TV. Let's take it into Joy Lim-Nackery, Court TV legal correspondent, who is in the studio with the latest on the Gone Girl mom. What's the big news tonight?
Well, Vinnie, finally, after all this time, Sherry Papini has acknowledged that she actually did fake her own kidnapping back in 2016. She's pleaded guilty now to charges of lying to a federal officer and also mail fraud. She said in a statement in part, quote, "I'm deeply ashamed of myself for my behavior and so very sorry for the pain I've caused my family, my friends, all the good people who needlessly suffered because of my story, and those who worked so hard to try to help me. I will work the rest of my life to make amends for what I have done." Remember, the 39-year-old sparked a 3-week search across California and several other states before finally she was found, apparently beaten with remnants of bindings on her wrists and ankles, some 150 miles from her home. Remember, she had bruises, a swollen nose, a burned forearm, rashes, ligature marks, a blurred brand on her shoulder. And prosecutors say she actually injured herself to back up her false statements. Remember, she even gave the FBI, the sketch artist, a detailed description of 2 Hispanic women that she claimed kidnapped her at knife point. And she got some $30,000 in reimbursements from the California Victims Compensation Fund, Vinnie. And, you know, obviously the penalty is extreme. It's high. It's serious. 5 years is the maximum in federal prison for lying to federal agents, up to 20 years for mail fraud. Not clear what punishment she will face in this particular plea deal, though, Vinnie.
Yeah, the big problem with these hoaxes is that people who are actual victims then get questioned, right? And people are less likely to believe them, whether it's a jury or it's the investigators looking at the case. All right, a lot of trials we're covering on Court TV. Let's begin with the novelist, Nancy Brophy, accused of murdering her husband. We all know she wrote that essay, How to Murder Your Husband. What's happening today in that case?
Yeah, so it was day 6 now of testimony, and the day started with more testimony from the lead investigator, Anthony Merrill, who told the jury this time that Nancy was not a suspect initially. They actually felt bad for her, tried to comfort her. Later in the day, we heard from Detective Scott Broughton, who testified that he helped Nancy home. He checked on her Glock even. And then later on in the day, the jury heard from a cell phone expert Kelsey Guay, who testified that Nancy Brophy's cell phone activity was unusual on the day in question. So apparently she could normally be tracked traveling to routine destinations from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. each day. But on the day in question, it was different.
Now, you said that, specifically talking about Nancy's phone, that changed at some point in the morning. Can you tell us what time that changed?
So at roughly 10:20 a.m., there begins to be cell site activity recorded at cell site locations heading down towards downtown Portland along 26, okay. Highway 26.
And so just to kind of visualize this, you're saying the phone is hitting this tower near the Brophy home, but now you're starting to see movement as it's hitting other towers as the phone is heading towards downtown.
Yes.
Okay. And that was around 10:20 a.m.?
Correct.
You didn't see movement of that phone before that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Was there activity on that phone before 10:20?
There were data transmissions and a few incoming phone calls. I believe the incoming phone calls were after 9 a.m.
So that's really important, Vinnie, because you may recall that it was sometime between 7:20 on the day in question and 8 a.m. that it's believed that Nancy Brophy's husband, Dan, was ultimately killed. And as you pointed out, this is a novelist who wrote the essay, How to Murder Your Husband, by her own admission. She took a great interest in police investigations, so she may have been aware that her cell phone could be tracked.
Unbelievable trial. Okay, we're on a verdict watch also. Let's start in two cases. Let's start in New Jersey. Michael Barrison, the former Olympian.
Yeah, that's the former Olympic equestrian who's on trial, accused of trying to murder his tenants. So the jury was actually dismissed early for the day. That's because tomorrow they're going to start by listening to 3 hours of testimony played back. And that's something that they requested. It's from defense psychiatrist Stephen Simring. So this afternoon, that's what the jury asked for. They asked for his complete testimony to look at that again. They also asked for the exact dates for when each expert witness saw Barrison. Now, Dr. Simring saw him for a visit in September of 2019, along with 4 Zooms in April of 2020. Defense psychologist Charles Hassan had 7 visits with Barrison in October, November, and December of 2021. And the state psychologist, Louis Schlesinger, had 3 visits with him in January, March, and April of 2021. Remember that the actual incident took place in August of 2019, so all the evaluations were after the fact. The defense claims that Barrison was driven temporarily insane, so that's why this sort of testimony is so important. For each count, the jury has 3 options. They can, of course, convict him, find him guilty, find him not guilty, or find him not guilty by reason of insanity. And in addition, they can also consider, I should say, the lesser included offense of aggravated assault, Vinnie. And as you know, diminished capacity could lead to that outcome. And of course, that would require the jury looking again at that sort of testimony about his mental state and kind of psychological or psychiatric issues he may have been experiencing.
Dr. Stephen Simring, friend of mine, I used him as an expert witness in one of my trials. Brilliant guy, and a great witness also. All right, we're also on verdict watch. Dr. William Usel being represented by my pal Jose Baez. Only kidding. I don't think he likes me. But what's the latest there?
Yeah, so, yeah, of course, our viewers, true crime watchers, would know Jose Baez, who represented Casey Anthony. But, you know, the jury resumes their deliberations 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. And just to refresh everyone, Dr. Usel is charged with 14 counts of murder related to fentanyl overdoses. Jose Baez, his defense attorney, rested on the mistrial motion that he had filed Monday. He had said, you know, during closing arguments that prosecutors implied that the defense had the burden of proof, which obviously is not the case. The judge acknowledged he was making the argument for the record, and they moved on. The defense is claiming that Usel was actually just trying to relieve the pain of his patients and is being used as a scapegoat for systemic failure at Mount Carmel Health System. The jury, by the way, was instructed not to consider the fact that the defendant did not testify here. Also today, 2 alternate jurors were sworn in, replacing 2 of the original 12. So we'll see what's happened in this weeks-long trial.
A little jury shakeup. All right, Joy Lim Nakrin at the studio, at the headquarters, the Court TV mothership. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll see you again. All right, folks, when we come back, we'll bring back in our think tank. Also hear from you, the 13th juror. The question tonight, which is worse, committing domestic violence or falsely accusing someone of committing domestic violence? Your verdict next.
allegation can devastate a career, and it can devastate a family. And the evidence will show that Ms. Heard's false allegations had a significant Mr. Depp's family and his ability to work in the profession he loved.
Then 2 years ago, I became a public figure representing domestic abuse, and I felt the full force of our culture's wrath for women who speak out. There's absolutely nothing false about that statement. First of all, the evidence will show that Amber did suffer domestic abuse at the hands of Johnny Depp. And it took many forms. Physical, sure, but also emotional, verbal, psychological abuse. That's all domestic abuse that she suffered at his hands.
So ultimately, when we think about this case, there's one of two things happened here. Either Amber Heard is the victim of domestic violence, or Johnny Depp is the victim of a false accusation of being a domestic abuser. So I was thinking about that today, and I posted a question, a 13th juror question today on social media, asking you, which is worse, being a domestic abuser or being someone who falsely accuses someone of domestic violence? Our 13th juror comment of the day tonight coming from Kim, who says, committing domestic violence to me is worse. People die from it and are scarred or even physically and mentally disabled for life. All true. Let's bring back in the think tank Michael Sterling, Ann Bremner, Rick King with us. Rick, I'll begin with you. You're a former police officer also, so you've seen a lot of this stuff firsthand. What do you think is worse, domestic abuse or falsely accusing someone very publicly of domestic abuse?
You know, that depends on which side of that you're on. You know, I've been, as you said, as a former police officer, I've been to domestic calls where, you know, people have been hurt badly. And, you know, the effects of some of those are permanent. You can't minimize the effect of the violence and devastation that takes on an individual. But on the other hand, as someone, when you're falsely accused of anything, you know, that can devastate your life. It can change job opportunities. It can change relationships with other people. It's both of them are seriously bad situations to be in. I wouldn't want to be on either side. And while I agree with the writer there, that sometimes the effects of domestic violence can be permanent. But they're equally devastating to the individual.
Absolutely. This was a tough question I asked today, by the way. James tonight says, I would have to go with accusations of domestic violence because it is done with a malicious intent as opposed to being beaten in the heat of the moment. Michael Sterling, I'll throw that one to you. Your thoughts? I mean, a false accusation can result in a conviction, could result in someone going to prison for something they didn't do. I mean, both of these are really bad. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Vinny, I agree with you. Both of them are completely awful. But a false accusation, as we saw with the Central Park 5, can result in someone spending years in prison. False accusations, as we've seen with DNA evidence 20, 25 years later that have exonerated individuals, right, can result in somebody spending 20 or 25 years in prison for a crime they did not commit. False accusations, as we saw with the Emmett Till case, can result in someone being lynched, right? Domestic violence is awful, right? But false accusations can also lead to dire consequences for the individuals who are falsely accused. Not only that, false accusations, Vinny, also cast doubt on other genuine, other genuine cases of abuse, right? So one lie can cast a doubt on other individuals who come forward with a genuine case of abuse. So I think the false accusations, the chilling effect that they have on other individuals who have suffered genuine abuse, right, and the chilling effect they have on individuals who are falsely accused have extraordinarily dire consequences. While I don't want to sort of equate one as being worse than the other, because they're both really awful. If you're asking me the question, I think that what we've seen from false accusations have been, the consequences have just been, extraordinary.
Tracy, tonight, the act of domestic violence is worse. A lot of people die from it, but lying about it is just one notch below that, just one notch. I love the way Tracy describes that, because she's, agreeing, I think, with all of us. These are both really bad. And Bremner, for this jury, this is really the question they've got to decide what happened here. Is someone being falsely accused, or is someone the victim? They've got to figure it out.
There's a saying that a lie can get halfway around the world before truth can get its shoes on. That's what you're dealing with here in terms of what happened to Johnny Depp, if you go with what he's saying in his complaint. But on the other hand, it's a terrible thing to commit domestic violence. In my career, I've handled a lot of domestic, civil and onward, and it's, it can escalate, and that can make it worse. It can make it a notch worse than the lying about abuse, because it can escalate to something as serious as homicide. And we know that happens all the time. So as we're weighing these, it's so difficult. You can add these factors on one side, like Michael and Rick have, and then add these on the other side, and basically go back and forth and say, this is worse, this is worse. But this jury's got to decide, who's telling the truth, who was abused, and who's lying about it.
Lisa, tonight, falsely accusing someone of domestic violence is worse, because you're going to be charged as though it's legit, and an innocent life is ruined. Our system benefits the wrong more than the right. Rick King, I think the real damage, as Michael pointed out and as Lisa pointed out, is false accusations undermine our system. Absolutely undermine, because I always say the worst outcome in a trial is a wrongful conviction. That is our system is set up to try to prevent that, and false accusations feed into that and really undermine our system.
Listening to Michael just a moment ago speak so eloquently about the collateral effects of false accusations, and he's right, and I 100% agree with him. However, when I look back at my time as a policeman, and I remember watching the lady lie there dead from domestic violence, it's hard for me to compare the two.
I get you. Great job as always, Michael Sterling and Bremner. Rick King, thank you so much. We'll be right back. All right, Johnny Depp's sister will resume her cross-examination first thing in the morning here on Court TV. But before we go tonight, I have a picture to show you. Take a close look. This is Nathaniel Cook, 13 years old, missing from Denver, Colorado since March 17th. If you see Nathaniel, please call 911, 1-800-THE-LOST, or you can call the Thornton Police Department. Let's see if we can get Nathaniel home where he belongs. That's it for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Vinnie Politan. Have a great night. And as always, don't forget to hug the kids.
This program is based upon a true story and contains reenactments. Portions of this program may be disturbing to audience members. Viewer discretion is advised.
Up next, a young boy